and welcome to our Peer Perspective series. I'm Jen, the Hope for HIE social worker. I'm glad that you are all here today. We have a really exciting topic. We are going to be talking about vacation and traveling with children with HIE and some of their special needs. I'm really excited. I have two of our peer support mentors, Stephanie Lind and Allison Moyes, who are here, who are travelers with their child. And they are going to just talk to you about some of the ins and outs and tips and tricks that they have found along the way. So without further ado, I would like to introduce Stephanie and Allison. Thank you, ladies, for joining us. If you guys want to just kind of get us started and just a brief introduction of yourselves, that would be great.
I'm Stephanie Lindy, and I am a mom to a 4.5-year-old who has severe HIE. And we've been on this journey and love to travel with our little guy. So that's why we're here talking.
Hi, I'm Allison. I am a peer support mentor and a mom to a 8-year-old named Rob. We have been traveling since he was about 3 years old. So it has been a great experience, learned lots of lessons, and like to share the tips and tricks I've learned along the way.
Wonderful. Thank you, guys. Well, let's just jump into it. So when you are planning a vacation, I'm assuming there might be some things that go into how you go about choosing destinations, or maybe not. Can you talk about a little bit of the pre-planning that goes into planning vacations?
Sure. One of the big things we usually look for is, with a hotel, are they ADA accessible? Do they have rooms that are ADA accessible, that have like bars in the bathroom, a little extra space for navigating a wheelchair? Things like that are really important. Also, having a refrigerator in the room is super important, especially if you have kids that are on medications that have to be refrigerated, or have feedings that have to be refrigerated in between times, things like that. That's really important. We also look for places that have pools, because Jake loves to swim. So we like to have that as an option as well. And then things to do around that area that are also accessible, whether that be theme parks or activities, things like that he might like to do. Those are kind of some of the things that we look at first when we're trying to investigate a location.
So we do pretty similar. When we first started traveling with Rob, we stayed fairly local, and we actually did a family vacation, like an hour and a half away, with my whole side of the family. So everybody had rented cabins, so we rented one there. It wasn't the most ADA accessible, but it was, close enough that we could make it work, especially since we had lots of helping hands, around. And then our bigger trip, we did a cruise with him. So, making sure we booked that, accessible cabin, making sure that any of the excursions we did were ADA accessible, figuring out the flights and transportation from, the airport to the hotel to the cruise port. It took a lot of planning, but it was doable. It just, we started planning like a year and a half in advance. So, just taking all of that in consideration, and just lots of research, and, lots of Facebook searching in the groups as well.
Do you feel that the hotels are pretty accommodating for questions and breaking things down for you? Because I know some hotels have the ADA accessible, but I would assume that some families have very specific needs. I've seen on our Facebook Parent Hub people questioning like an actual bathtub, because showering or bathing their child can be difficult. So do you find that navigating that can be helpful? Or
I think that different locations have different ideas of what ADA accessible means.
Yeah.
So the last hotel we stayed at, which was just a couple weeks ago, they were quote unquote ADA accessible. The main floor was the 3rd floor. We were up on the 5th floor. So I don't know what would have happened if there had been an emergency and we would have had to get our child down 2 flights of stairs. But, and it was the farthest room from the front desk. Not exactly perfect, but I don't think that they always think through what families need when they're looking for something that's ADA accessible.
So would you say that don't take ADA accessible at face value, probably call and talk to the hotel so you can make sure that what they consider as ADA accessible meets your family's needs?
Definitely.
Okay.
Definitely.
Absolutely. That's what we did when we cruised. We called the cruise line and like asked questions about, you know, how big the room is, what type of shower there is, what options there are. And, you know, and typically they're pretty good. They even did, if they didn't have the answer, they took notes and called me back actually. So, you know, it's definitely, it also depends who you talk to.
I can only imagine. How about also like when choosing destinations? I know children with HIE, their outcomes can vary greatly, but children that have a little bit more severe, more medical needs, does how close a children's hospital play a factor or any of that kind of stuff and making
Definitely. We like to go places that are at least close to a hospital we've heard of, or they're in cities or towns that are a little bit bigger so that there's a good chance that there's a children's hospital nearby, just in case. My husband and I went on a cruise a couple of years ago, and we specifically didn't take our son because we were going to Alaska and we knew that there wasn't going to be anything close by. And the fear of having him too far away from that was just a little much.
So we definitely take that into consideration as well. The first few times we traveled, like I said, we stayed fairly local. So we were only like an hour and a half, 2 hours away from our children's hospital. So that was nice. And it was like, kind of easing into traveling. One of the times we did forget some, pretty important equipment. So it was nice to be semi-local, and my brother-in-law was a saint and drove it up to us. So, but so that the benefits of staying semi-local. And then when we did the cruise, we did specifically pick the port that we did because it was, went out of Texas and we went to Honduras, Costa Maya, and Cozumel. And we chose those locations because we knew it was only a quick flight back to the US. Like the actual distance from the US isn't that far. And we would be close to Texas Children's, which is a pretty good children's hospital. So we figured if we're gonna take this risk and do it, let's at least have a semi-good backup plan.
Plan for everything and hope it's uneventful.
Exactly. We rented an oxygen tank, a concentrator to bring with us, and just in case. And my son's not on oxygen baseline, but sometimes if he's sick or something, he may need it. So we were like, you know what, let's bring it. We did. We used it for 3 hours out of the whole 7 days, but I'm glad we had it. So it's just preparing for the worst and hoping for the best.
I like that. Now, you mentioned flying. So when it comes to traveling, there's some different options. How do you manage things flying versus driving? Any tips with either of them that you've worked through with any of your trips?
So for flying for us, it was the first time we had flown with him since he was 6 months old, and now he's 8. So that's a whole different ball game. We decided to get a conveyed wheelchair, like a stroller chair, to bring with us instead of his regular wheelchair. And, just in case something happened, we didn't want the chance of his regular wheelchair that's customized for him breaking. So we were able to get a secondhand chair from someone local to bring with us that we made work. It wasn't the best, but it did its job for the 7 days we were gone. And it folded down easy for storage while we were on the cruise ship. And then just like one of the excursions was supposed to be ADA accessible, it wasn't the best ADA accessible. So being able to fold that chair down was very helpful. And in the airport was definitely tricky. I highly, highly, highly suggest calling TSA Cares ahead of time. You call within 72 hours of traveling and they take down all your information. I think I was on the phone with them for like 45 minutes. We went over everything we were going to have with us. And they said, all right, when you get to the airport, someone's going to meet you. They're going to walk you through. We happened to get there a little early. And so I found someone in line because I wasn't sure where to go. They literally like escorted us straight through. The guy was like, "Oh, you're early. I had it on my call to call you at 5:30. Look, and then they were great. I mean, they got us right through. The head of the department came over and was like, "Oh, are you guys the people that called?" And I was like, "Yep." She was like, "Thank you so much for calling. It helps us a ton when you call." He gave me his card in case we had any other issues while we were in the airport to call him directly. They were so phenomenal. One of Rob's meds had leaked all over a bag. They cleaned up the bag. They went and wiped it all out for us and got it all situated. I mean, they were absolutely phenomenal. I couldn't suggest it more. Coming back through the other airport in Texas, they weren't as accommodating as Boston were, but they still were good. It was more like a, okay, another one of you, like, here you go, but it just, the people in the Boston Logan were so great that it really left a good lasting impression that I would definitely utilize it again. And then just kind of planning and triple checking lists. I think I had lists upon lists upon lists. And even my husband and I had talked afterwards, like, our list next time we do something, a big travel like that, will have spots for where we packed things, because we tried to pack in advance and then we're like, wait, where's this? And then we were in the airport thinking we forgot something, and we really didn't. And it would have saved a lot of stress if we would have written down where we packed, especially important things like med syringe caps and that stuff.
We've done both. We traveled with calling TSA cares, and then I tried to travel without calling TSA cares. Bad idea, really bad idea. So one of the nice thing is you can travel with a medical bag, and TSA cares will want to know, kind of what's in there, and they'll go through the screening process. So you can have your formula in there, your medications, and there's not that 3-ounce limitation, but they just want to know kind of what you're carrying with you, and that it's, the required things for your child. Because I don't like to check anything that would be catastrophic if I lost it. So, I mean, clothes you can replace, shoes, all that stuff you can replace, but your child's medications, that would be an awful lot. Or their food, especially since most of us can't get our child's food at Walmart. So going through that process to make sure you have everything you need, and that bag can be really heavy, and that's okay. They don't care. You can have more than one medical bag if you need to, if you have to split it up. So that's a big thing. I flew with him for the first time to Seattle, and it was so funny because coming back with TSA cares, they had 4 agents that walked, one ahead of us, one behind us, and one on either side of us, and walked us all the way down to our gate. People thought we were celebrities. They're like, who are they? Because, I mean, we have these officers. No one, just TSA cares people, just walking along. So it was funny, but and there are some airports that are better than others as far as having like accessible bathrooms, things like that. I know Phoenix, I found a bathroom with an adult changing station and everything. It was fantastic. If you think you're going to have to change your child on the plane, there are changing tables in the bathrooms. However, they are not built for any child who's over about 3 months old. So we usually try to sit in like the bulkhead space, like that front row, if you're on a Southwest flight, so that you've got a lot of floor space. And then unfortunately, usually have to change him on the floor in the plane because there's just not enough room anywhere else.
For diapering for us, we actually did we found a family restroom and laid a whole lot down on the floor and right before we got on the plane. And then we did a double diaper on the plane. We did a like adults depends on the inside than with his regular diaper on the outside. So it was more like almost like a extra absorbent pad on the inside. And that was able to do that 4-hour flight. I don't think we would have made it any more than 4 hours, but quicker flights, it's a little easier to do.
Yeah. Jake would have stunk out the plane if we didn't change him. Yeah. Unfortunately, that change in altitude sometimes has an effect on our kids' GI tracts.
Okay. Okay. Anything with like seat accommodations? I know you had mentioned the bulkhead positioning in the planes, but I also recognize some questions on our parent hub about, you know, kind of like those car seats that can fit in their younger, older children. Have you utilized any of those and found anything that worked well?
We did
I'm gonna
not.
Okay.
We just kind of put Rob in the middle between us. We did put like a cushion underneath him, and then we used a soft collar to kind of help with some head support. And we always use it's like a toddler pillow. It's like probably about this big, and we always like use that behind his head to kind of help support and kind of keep him from extending too much. So we did that and just really safely secured him on takeoff and landing with us, just because he is over the weight limit for most commercial car seats. And we don't have a larger go-to seat. I know some people have used those, but they're not technically FAA approved. So some, depending on who it is, will let you use it, some won't. I know some people have used like special tomato seats, especially because those go a little bit on higher on the weight limits. Rob has some sort of trunk control. Like it's not great, but with us helping, he's okay. So we were able to maneuver it. But like I said, anything more than that 4-hour flight, we probably would have needed to figure out something else.
Okay.
Jake doesn't really have trunk control or head control, so I've actually just held him on flights, which I know is probably not going to be a possibility much longer, just because he's getting to be a little bit heavy. After 2, you have to have a seat for the child, even though they may or may not actually sit in it. So it's kind of nice to at least know you have that spot to be able to sit them down or what have you. We do have a go-to seat. I haven't tried that in the plane, so that may be our next trip to try that out. But with the seats sitting straight up and without his head control, that because you can't recline it back while during takeoff and landing, I don't know how well that would work for us.
Okay.
So probably just laying him over or what have you.
Any suggestions on traveling via car? Have you guys done any traveling like longer distances? Any thoughts on that?
We just got back from Gatlinburg, which is about an 8-hour drive from where we live now.
Oh, okay.
And we did travel via car there. And last summer we went to Virginia Beach, which was about 13 hours. We stopped halfway, but making sure that you've planned plenty of stops for diaper changes and getting out and stretching is a big thing, because you don't want them to be all cramped up for too long. The nice thing about traveling by car is you can bring all your stuff. You don't have to worry about, size limits for suitcases and things like that. So yeah, we have try to keep headphones with us for to make sure that we don't get sensory overload. Lots of toys in the car so you can keep things interesting. Something different.
So we've only done about, like I said, about that 2-hour drive is the farthest we've done, but it is nice to be able to bring all of your stuff. So like, on a cruise, we were only really able to bring like his nebulizer. And when we did the 2-hour drive, we were able to bring like his chest PT vest and, some extra oxygen and just having that sense of security. And as we all know, wheelchair vans can pack quite a bit depending on where you position your child, so it's nice. But even being able to bring like the bath chair, which you can't do when you fly, like having that extra positioning is really nice. But we also plan lots of stops. Luckily the 2 hours is not awful, but it's keeping some good music. Luckily Rob likes to sleep in the car, so a lot of times he just passes out and hangs out and listens to some music. But it's it is really nice being able to have the sense of security and knowing like, okay, if something does happen, I have my car. We can just go. I don't have to worry about how am I going to get there or where I have to go. And at least like, and a lot of us can deal with stuff for a lot longer just because we would know like, all right, maybe we need to start tracking it at least closer to home if we need to, and having your car there is a nice security blanket.
That, and you take your wheelchair if you've got a wheelchair accessible vehicle, so so that they're in their chair, or like we have a car seat for Jake, and we have his car seat with us when we travel by car. That's a concern when we fly, is making sure, how are we going to transport him once we get to wherever it is we are. That doesn't always work out as well as one would hope. And
That's
probably have traveled in some ways that maybe weren't exactly the safest, because we didn't have a car seat for him.
That's one of the reasons we chose to do a cruise, was because we could book a shuttle through the cruise line to get us from the from the airport to and we stayed at a hotel at the airport the night before when we got in, so we didn't have to do any sort of transportation. It was literally a tunnel to the airport, to the hotel from the airport. So that was nice. And then in the next morning, the cruise line has an accessible shuttle that picks you up at the airport and brings you to the cruise port. So we booked that. So it was a big bus, and in the back it had a bunch of tie downs. So that was nice. But that's one of the reasons we picked that as well, is because so we didn't have to worry about accessible transportation whenever we get to where we're going. That's definitely one of the biggest, I would say, hurdles when booking traveling, and taking into consideration, like even, next month I'm going to visit family in Michigan for my grandfather's birthday. And we've decided that my husband and Rob are going to stay home, just because when, getting out there, the plane, then when we get there, figuring out accessible transportation, because he's 73 pounds. So he can't just, lap it or do a car seat really anymore. So would just be too much, especially because I'm only going for like 2 days. So it's a quick turnaround. So that takes it into consideration, it just would be too much to try to figure out. And then if you can rent an accessible car, it's 10 times more expensive than renting a regular car. So it's like, I don't know, sometimes upwards of like $250 a day for an accessible, especially when you get to like the big metropolitan areas. And unfortunately, that's a lot of times only where the rental places are. So, it's definitely a lot I would say that's definitely the biggest hurdle when planning a vacation, is the accessible transportation piece.
Yeah, I didn't even think about like the car seat piece of things, that you can get the transportation. It's expensive. But then if your child requires a special car seat, do you risk checking that car seat? Because that stuff gets banged around.
It does. And a lot of those are really big. I mean,
Yeah.
his car seat is not a small car seat. And it's just a standard. We bought it at, it's an even flow. But I can't imagine traveling with it. It's not something I'd want to take out of my car and travel with.
Sure.
So
Earlier, you guys had talked a little bit about, when picking your destination, you make sure that there's some reasonable medical facilities nearby just in case. I guess, what do you do to best prepare that your child's daily medical needs are met when you're away? Like when it comes to packing and preparing, I know you had talked a little bit about that medical bag and making sure things are just with you, but how do you work through those checklists? And because you can only take so much, especially when flying.
true. We dose out all of Jake's medications, at least a week's worth at a time. So what I usually do is I bag them by dose time, and then put them in a bigger bag by day, and then put all of them in a big bag. So I have all of them by day and all of them by dosage. So I just have to pull out one bag, and I've got all of his meds. So I don't have to worry about having, trying to remember how many syringes do I need and which medications do I need and what do I need to pull together. And that way I have time at home to really get everything lined out. So I don't have to do that in some strange space that I may or may not have table space to do it.
So we brought all the bottles with us. Because some of his meds are light sensitive, so we don't pre-dose them. So we made sure we did all of our refills, if we whatever we could refill right before we left. One of our meds we were going to run short of while we were gone because of when the refill date was. So I was able to talk with his complex care team and the palliative care team, and they worked together to get us like an emergency dose. So they were able to calculate out, like it took a lot of calculating on everyone's behalf, but they were able to calculate out how much we would need plus 2 days in case of an emergency, in case for some reason flight delay, stuck on a hurricane, whatever, because we were flying we were technically cruising during hurricane season, so we needed a couple extra days just in case. So they were able to calculate that out and write in for a just like, an emergency prescription, and they were able to get an override with insurance to make sure we had it with us. They also came up with a care plan, like an emergency care plan for us. Because obviously, like, I know everything off the top of my head, like for our day-to-day stuff, but like some of his weird nuances he has, like they came out, and just having it signed by a medical professional, sometimes it has a little bit more weight than mom just being like this, he does this. So they had it printed out for me, so in case we had to go somewhere, I would have signed documentation from a medical professional stating everything with all of their phone numbers directly on it. So I wouldn't have to try to search, or look anything up or whatever in the time being. It felt very safe having that, just because I was like, if I have to go somewhere, even if we were in Mexico and had to go to a hospital there, I at least have this signed by a medical professional I can hand to someone and be like, this is him in a nutshell, and this is their number if you have any questions. So that was really, really helpful for me. And then just we had an entire medium suitcase filled with diapers. You don't realize, especially as your kids get older, how big diapers can get. So we had enough in our carry-on for like 2 days, and then we packed everything else in another suitcase. And to comment on the medical bags flying free, you can also check some of those medical bags. Any checked medical bags also fly free. So our entire suitcase of just diapers flew for free. So, and then we had another, because we were gone for 10 days, so we had like 2 days worth of all like diapers, food. We took meds, we didn't check any meds, but like diapers, food, like extra supplies on us. And then we checked everything else in medical bags. And so all that flew for free. Like they literally, and I don't know if it was just them, but they were like, is this a medical bag? I was like, yep. They're like, all right, here you go. I was like, you're not going to check to make sure it is? Like, I'm not going to question you, but sure. And then it's just having those extra supplies, like really just overpacking. I feel like you can never be too over prepared, like, because you just don't know, like things happen. And if I rather have that stuff than be stressing out. Like I thought I was going to stress out about how not having the medication adapters we ended up finding, but it made the trip a rough start.
Any other do's and don'ts of packing? Like, have you ever found any kind of travel versions of some of the equipment your children use that have come in handy?
So we got, like I said, we rented a portable oxygen concentrator, so that was helpful. Unfortunately, it was not covered by insurance. If I thought a little bit harder, I might have been able to get it covered, but I also made the mistake of saying we were going on a cruise. If I didn't say we were going on a cruise, I think they would have done it if I would have said we were just going to Texas, but technically we were leaving the US, so they wouldn't cover it. So we just rented out of pocket. It was a little pricey, but it was nice to have the peace of mind. For oxygen concentrators, there are very strict guidelines depending on the, they're pretty much like they're all right around the same, but every like flight line has a different expectations of what to have. So we flew and we needed was it 3 or 4 times the battery life on us. So like we had to have so many backup batteries.
Oh.
So I think our flight was 4 hours, so we had to have 8 hours worth of battery backup or something like that. Whoever we rented it from like asked us, okay, who are you flying with? And he knew their expectations and like brought the appropriate amount of batteries. Like he was like, this is what you'll need. And I was like, thank you. That's what I needed to know. And he dropped it off at our house and I called him when we got home and he picked it up the next day. So that was great. Just don't be scared to pack too much. That's my biggest thing is, especially with flying. Yes, it's going to stink to have to figure out how you're going to get all that to the hotel, but you rather have it than not, and then if you are traveling, scope out ahead of time where you're going, like we said, the children's hospitals or urgent cares, or if you're traveling within the US, we have the HIE different Facebook groups for different locations. Like I have seen so many different times between HIE groups or just other Facebook groups I'm a part of. Hey guys, I'm traveling here, I forgot this. Can
Does anyone have one?
Does anyone have this? Or like I can send you my supply when I get home. Like, speaking of forgetting things, I forgot to mention this. So we forgot the plug to Rob's pulse ox machine.
Oh no.
We grabbed the pulse ox machine is a 3-prong on the back, and my husband accidentally grabbed the cord that was a 2-prong on the back. We did it. Luckily, we realized it when we got to Texas, not so the day before we got on the cruise ship. But a hurricane had just hit Texas the week before. So nothing was open yet because everything was still flooded. Like my sister and my dad got to their hotel and it was closed, and nobody told them that it was closed from the hurricane. Like it was a mess. I found a Office Max on Instacart that had my lovely plug that would have probably been $7 at Walmart for $47 on Instacart. But we got it, and good thing we did because we needed it, because he has severe sleep apnea, so we need that every night. And we were like, oh, well, I guess we're just going to spot check all night, because what else are we going to do? But so you never know. So look at your surroundings. You never know. I found a pulse ox cord at Office Max. You just don't know. Like, so triple check those.
And always make sure you have extra stuff. I know, like I had our first day of vacation, I usually bring 1 or 2 extra food bags, because we never have trouble with our food bags. First day, fell off the counter, exploded, the whole bag, the food, the everything. Okay. So thankfully I had extra ones and I had extra food with me. But yeah, it got a little dicey towards the end of the vacation that I was starting to run a little bit short. But yeah, making sure you have a little bit of extra so that you have, enough to get through your vacation, extra connectors for your feeds. If you have G-tube or J-tube kiddos, because you never know when one of them is going to decide to break off. Yes.
And I forgot to mention too, for storage of any extra supplies, we use an over the door like shoe hanger.
Oh.
And so that was great on the cruise ship. Actually, another HIE mom gave me a lot of those tips because she is a frequent cruiser. So before we went, I reached out to her. And so it's like the one with all the little individual pockets, like we were able to put like 6 or 7 syringes in one, like a whole bunch of mouth swabs in one. It was really nice to for organization and just like getting things off a counter, just
because there's not much room in those cruise rooms.
Exactly.
Cruise cabins. There's so
it was nice little organization. So that was really helpful. And yeah, I think that was the only other thing. But it's pack extra. Don't be nervous. And then if your kid isn't super medically complex and you're just trying to figure it out, ask in the community, ask different people, because we've all had those experiences. or, make sure if you're looking for a place that might have like a break room so you can take a sensory break if need be, or so like if you're doing the big amusement parks, like, maybe do half a day and may like break it up into half days and take a break and go back to the hotel in between, just doing whatever works for you and your family, not what the world wants you to do. A vacation may look like different for everybody. It doesn't have to be go, go, go all the time. Sometimes our family's vacations, one time, like I said, Rob got sick and we sat in a cabin all week. And I was like, well, we're getting our money's worth out of our cabin. So this is great. Sometimes it happens, but just like parenting anybody, you're just parenting in a different location.
Definitely.
One thing we tried to remember is some laundry detergent and dryer sheets, just in case there is an opportunity to wash laundry. I know that a lot of our kiddos sometimes make messes in their clothes and whatnot, and so it's nice to be able to at least have that possibility and not add one more layer of possibility of allergic reaction or what have you. So we just bring our own laundry detergent and dryer sheets so we can make sure that at least that stays baseline.
That and a little travel thing of Dawn dish soap. We always bring that with
Yes.
us for like washing syringes or feeding tube supplies, or even stains out of clothes. Dawn works great.
Dawn is a miracle soap.
So yeah, we usually bring like how you can get it, like the convenience or like Walmart or whatever, the little travel size containers.
Sure.
We just fill one of those with Dawn and bring it with us.
Yeah.
A lot of tips. It's a lot of planning. I'm hearing a lot of planning and just all those little nuances that we probably take for granted. Just can't get up and go. Planning for the unexpected. I hear that's kind of a trend. Any favorite destinations that you've been to that went really well?
We just got back from Gatlinburg and that was really good. Dollywood was fantastic. They have 5, I think it is, adult changing stations scattered through the park. Wow. So that is phenomenal. And they have them listed on the park map, so you can easily find them. They're generally like family bathrooms, but then they have like a massage table or something of that sort in the bathroom so that you can put your child up on the table and they're safe and it holds enough weight, like an adult size weight, so that you can get them changed and what have you. They're also great little rooms for a little sensory break too. If your child needs that little, kind of break during the time that you're there. So they were fantastic. And their park is pretty accessible as far as rolling a stroller around. They allow you to do parent swaps if you're coming in and out of the lanes. They also are out of the rides, and they also have a ride accessibility area, and they'll go through the list with you regarding your child and what they can and can't do. So like if your child is in a wheelchair but has trunk support, there are certain rides that they can ride. And then if they don't have trunk support, there's some other things that they can do, like the train and the carousel. So they really go through that with you, and there's handicap entrances to all of the different rides. So you don't have to, push them through the long line. They just kind of space people out that are coming in on the, with a disability with those passes.
Good to know.
So we have only really done the 2 different trips. So we did a couple years up to the cabin in New Hampshire, and then we did the big cruise. I do suggest, if you can do cruising, it is very accessible. I mean, especially if you get an ADA cabin. Because Rob is in the more complex end, we couldn't do any of like the daycares, but I know that some cruise lines do have opportunities for the daycares, especially for kids that are more independent. And some of them even have like autism certifications. I know they did have sensory bags we could check out if we needed to. So for like headphones, fidget toys, they had those available for us. Everybody on the ship, like for the most most part was so accommodating, and just, elevators are always a tough thing, but all of the staff were really awesome with him, and, wanted to make sure he was included. And even, we probably shouldn't have gone in July. It was very, very hot. So it was, just he slept a lot because he was kind of struggling with the heat. And even some of the staff would come in and check in, like, is he doing all right? Do you guys need anything? Like, or like we said, like, oh, we're looking for a more shaded spot. One opened up, someone came over and was like, hey, people are getting up over there if you're still looking for that shaded spot. Like, people were really great. And it just, everything is flat, so you don't have to really worry about wheelchair accessibility. So that was really nice. And they have opportunities in all the dining rooms for like roll up tables. And they really just made sure they had like a magician come around during dinner, and he came right over and like was really trying to like focus on Rob. We had 13 people with us, and he just pretended no one else was there, and Rob was the only one getting the magic tricks. So, it really was nice. And we definitely would do it again. We would definitely probably do it a little different next time, just because of Rob and his needs. But I highly suggest cruising for people, especially if you live near a cruise port and you don't have to fly. That takes a whole portion out of the equation. That's probably the tougher of the portion of the equation. So, if that is a possibility for you, even if it's just a weekend one, it's, the only thing I guess that really we struggled with is with the pools on cruise ships. If your child is not potty trained, they typically can't go in the pools. I know some cruise ships do have like splash pads that will allow people in that, if you utilize a swim diaper. We were able to utilize it's almost like a small like wading pool area. One of the lifeguards just like kind of let us sit him on the edge because he was like, just go, it's fine. Like, he's 8. It's not like he's still a child. So like a baby in a swim diaper, it's a little different. So they were really great about it, but I know not all cruise lines are. So that's definitely something to take into consideration, but all the ports were great. I mean, he went into the water and Rotan and was floating around, and the water was so salty, it like kept him afloat. So we were just kind of supporting his head, and he was loving life. So I definitely think it's a great opportunity, even if like one time it's worth it.
One quick thing, I know when we flew, our wheelchair got damaged.
Oh,
The airline is responsible for that. So they have to pay to have your wheelchair fixed if they damage it on the flight. So, and I try to always make sure that we let the people know that are putting the wheelchair in that this is a wheelchair. It is a mobility device for a child who cannot otherwise transport themselves. So please be careful with it. I don't know that necessarily does anything, but we try. But yeah, we had to go into the like baggage area and talk to them. They're like, oh, well, we'll just give you another wheelchair. I'm like, you can't just give me another custom fitted wheelchair for my child. So I need you just to fix this one, or have somebody come out to fix this one.
okay.
I've seen people like take pictures of their chairs before they go. I think it was maybe Susie posted on hers. She like put caution tape all around Holly's chair and like had directions taped to the back of it, just because like, where the brake is and folding it down. Like every chair is so different. So
yeah, I tried to take mine apart and fold it up first so that I was doing that piece. They weren't having to do that piece, because some of them are very complicated to try to take apart. And if you don't know how to do it, it'd probably be pretty easy to break them.
yeah, sure. That's why we did a folding stroller. And like we got Rob on the plane, and then my husband came back out, folded the stroller down, and then handed it off to them and was like, put it on like this.
Yes. And they're two, I mean, they have a quote unquote wheelchair area usually in the plane that it is for those ones that fold up completely flat and slide right in. It's not for our wheelchairs that we have for our kiddos.
Great tip. Anything else that you guys can think of that we didn't cover? You've given lots of tips and tricks, or even maybe someone that has a littler child that's would like to travel and they're just scared. Like, what is like your number one tip to help them with some of those nerves?
go and do it. It's an opportunity of a lifetime to give your child those chances to see different places and explore. And it's a joy to watch them interact with their world. And it's a great opportunity for you to interact with them, where you don't have all the stresses of therapies and doctor's appointments and everything else. You're just focused on your family. And I think that's a great opportunity.
Absolutely. I love just the point of making memories. Like, it's, even if it's day trips, start small. Like, like I said, we started going an hour and a half away. Like, it wasn't like, we jumped on a plane the very first time. And, even when he was smaller, we did go down, but he was 6 months old at that point. He had no extra equipment. He was still eating by mouth. It was a whole different world back then. But, there's risk with traveling for any child of just getting sick, that being on an airplane or being in an unfamiliar environment, but your child's best. So even if you start with like, a day out at the aquarium or the museum, and then a couple hours, and then build up to an overnight, maybe you do a staycation and just stay in a hotel room nearby and use the pool. We've done that. Just, rent a hotel room for the night, hang out, grab dinner, and go hang by the pool for the night. Just, start small. And then, once you can do that, then maybe you do it for a weekend, 45 minutes away. And then, by the time your kid's 7, you're hopping on a plane and then onto a cruise ship. It's just, you build it up.
And we started, I think, goodness, Jake was probably about 6 to 8 months old the first trip we took. So yeah, he was still pretty little. And we've gone on pretty much week-long trips every year that in the 4.5 years. So we've gone to California, we've gone to Seattle, Destin, Virginia Beach, and then Gatlinburg. So lots of different places, great opportunities. Ocean is not our friend, like open ocean. We tried that with Jake. That was not super accessible, but don't be afraid to ask too. Like, we walked past this hotel and we saw that they had this really nice indoor pool, and it wasn't a chain hotel when we were in Virginia. So we just went in and said, hey, we took our kid to the beach. He has disabilities. It's not going to work for us. Is there any way we could use your pool? And I mean, we'd be happy to pay for it. And they're like, sure. So we were able to come back later and get him in the pool, and he loves the water. So it was a great opportunity there. So don't be afraid to ask if there's some accommodation that might be able to be made, because the worst thing that can happen is that they say no.
I really like that. Ladies, thank you so, so much. Lots of tips and tricks. And I love that you are teaching your children to just live life. It doesn't have to be limited. And I love that. So thank you for all of this. I know Stephanie, Allison, and I had talked earlier about maybe doing more of a Q&A or support group, that if people have more direct questions, maybe we can get some more people on and have some of that open dialogue. So be on the lookout for that. Also thinking, maybe, I know we have all of our different wonderful Facebook pages, and I see so many travel questions. I can look into the feasibility of maybe breaking off and having maybe like a travel page or something like that, where
Good.
you guys can come ask your questions and all things travel, because you never know. And people come up with such creative ways to travel these days.
Mm-hmm.
So I can just imagine saving some time and brain energy.
Yes.
Exactly.
Going through that.
Don't reinvent the wheel if somebody else can help you.
Mm-hmm.
Work smarter, not harder. Love it. I love all of that. Thank you guys so very much. I appreciate your time today.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.